friends, to the Wise Witch Garden Table, or an episode of Cosmic Conversations. Cosmic Conversations, we do a monthly one-to-one real talk, real wonder, one soul at a time. And today I am thrilled to introduce uh, Rena Grisolia. Um, she's a gifted medium, psychic, and soul walker who I've personally known for over 40 years and have been married to for 20. She's a graduate of the Arthur Ford Mediumship International Mediumship Institute. She's certified from Lilydale. She's the real deal, and thrilled to have you here, Rena. And she's also a co-creator of the Wise Witch Garden Table as well. So, hi, Rena. How you doing?
Very good. How about you?
I'm doing well. So, Rena, we're gonna rip right into some of these questions for
Okay.
you. So, let me ask you: is there a particular reading or spiritual experience that changed you as a person?
You mean how did I get into this?
Well, no, we know you're into it. So I'm
Okay.
just curious, like, is there a particular reading that you've done or experience that changed you as a person?
Well, there's been several, but one in particular that I remember being doing a reading in a group setting, and right before, well, what we do is we meditated and got ourselves into a good clear space. I say a prayer and clear my mind and ground myself. And this particular reading, something happened to me that never happened before. I physically felt what happened to the soul and souls that I was getting in contact with. Meaning, I was sitting on the floor, for instance, and my whole body felt a tremendous heat. And that told that I had never really felt things that like my whole body physically. I have gotten little parts and pieces, but this was my whole body was engulfed by hot, felt like fire. Uh, Needless to say, that was what happened to this spirit, and it was a young, 11-year-old boy,
Hmm.
and he came through very clear. He told me his name, he told me his age, he told me how he passed and that his two sisters were with him. One was older, one was younger. Um, and I have to say that he was a beautiful soul.
Oh,
I had a connection to him that I never had with anyone before in the spirit world, and I never met him. So, meaning he gave the information so clear, and he was so happy, this boy. I remember his voice. He said, "Hi, my name is Billy," and he was the age where your voice changes for males, and it was so adorable, and I just like automatically felt such a connection to this boy. So then I searched the room because we were doing a Zoom call. There was a lot of people, and I found the woman that it went with. I knew it wasn't her child, but I knew they were related, and it turned out it was her nephew and two nieces that had passed. So that was a big reading for me, a big experience for me. And that was about 5 years ago.
so when you first started, you had said, how did I get into it? And then I jumped right to an experience that changed you. So I guess I should back up maybe. How did this all happen for you?
Well, you were part of this because you were living in a house that was haunted. And I remember you calling me up and we were, I was like 22. You were 19. We were young. And you said, I'm hearing things at 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember this vividly. I'm hearing opera singing in the corner in this on the ceiling in the house, in the room, in the living room. So I was very skeptical that point in my life, and I laughed and I was
The
like,
way I remember.
I said, okay, whatever I didn't believe you, but I also, liked you as a person and just met you not long before. So I said, all right, I'll come over and spend the night. And that's what happened. And we camped out in the living room. And lo and behold, 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard opera singing in the corner of the living room ceiling. And I actually got up out of my sleeping bag and walked over to the corner. And it was like, oh, and had I not heard that for myself, I would not have believed it. So that's how I got into this. That's the beginning scene of it all.
Wow. So you've been doing this now for a long time, doing readings, both psychic readings and mediumship readings. And I'm curious, is there a difference between your approach to both?
Yes. I've heard the phrase and I really understand it and relate to it. All mediums are psychic, not all psychics are mediums.
Oh,
And for me, it's like the psychic part is you're reading energy, you're reading the room, you could be reading the person's mind that's across from you. That's different than an actual connection to a spirit that has passed on. And that's the hardest part to decipher, by the way, for me and for a lot of other people that I've come across and heard. And because you have to really keep yourself out of the reading, your opinions, your thoughts, your experiences, because the spirits will give you messages that make no sense to you. And your job or your responsibility is just to give it to that person, for their higher good, your higher good, all involved. You don't get to make sense of it. You don't get to put your spin on it. I try to just do it with love and kindness. And sometimes, I hold back a little if I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. And other times I'm very forthcoming and very to the point, depending on the situation.
and so I've heard when for folks who do medium work that sometimes spirits communicate or your spirit guides take you the information in ways that are meaningful to you as the reader. Is that true for you?
Yes, that what they try to do is give you, or mine do, my guides or your higher self, your guides. You could have a person that passed in your family that helps you. I have a grandmother that actually assists me in certain times. But what they do is they give you like symbols a lot. I see spirits. I also hear. I know you have that same thing. Like I'll hear a whole line, they'll give me a line and say that this person, this is how this person passed. And then I hear it in my ear, but it's a voice that's not mine. They'll just give me the fact. And other times they'll give me, because I like movies a lot. I watch a lot of movies. They'll give me actors and actresses and so I can get the person's names.
Oh,
Yeah, they have all different ways of communicating. Certain things, like colors mean stuff, and over a lifetime, I've built like a dictionary for myself where I know kind of like if they're talking about this person, this is what they really mean. And so you have to decipher it so you can translate it. That's the hardest part. And sometimes you have a very clear connection and it's just easy. It's just speak what they're saying and that's it. It's nice. It doesn't always happen that way.
and I remember a story. Well, it's not a story. This is a true story where this was about my mother's passing, and my mom died on a Monday. And I remember you had a dream on the Friday about my mom, who you didn't know super well. You met her a couple times, but uh and can you talk about that? What happened and that? And so I guess I'm curious, do you often get information through dreams as well from a mediumship and psychic perspective?
Yes. Dreams are very they communicate through dreams a lot because our guard is down
Yep.
and we're more relaxed, and especially with people that are close to you,
Yep.
because it is harder to read for people that are close to you, at least for me. And with you, yeah, I remember the dream vividly.
What
Your
was
mom,
the dream?
your mom was sitting on a park bench, like sitting on a bench, like you would in the park. And she was sitting there like with her hands folded, like waiting. And I went over to her in the dream and I said, "Hi, why are you here? What are you waiting for?" And she said, "Well, they're coming for me." And I knew what she meant. She meant her people were coming to get her, and she was going to pass very soon, and she did a
Yeah.
couple
Yeah.
of days later. Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty amazing. Um when you were doing this type of work, so you mentioned a little bit of the difference between doing mediumship. What's the psychic work? What's the difference there? How do you see them as different in terms of work?
Well, psychic work, I like psychic work a lot. A lot of mediums they don't give it as much attention, but I like it because it helps you with what's going on in your life. Um, where, people that have passed on, they're passed on, right? So a lot of people that come to you for guidance and help want to know, those three questions. Am I going to meet somebody? Am I going to have a lot of money? Am I going to be happy finally? And that's usually the reoccurring questions, right? We all have the same needs. And so with the psychic, like I've gotten messages, I went to a party. I was at a big Christmas party and there was over 100 people there. This is many years ago. And I saw this guy in the room and I said, it was my friend Mary's party. And I said, who, I pointed him out. I said, "Who is that?" She said, "Oh, that's Tom." And I said, "Oh, is he a good friend of yours or whatever?" I said. And she said, "No, we're just acquaintances. Yeah, he's just a nice guy." And I said, "Well, you're going to marry him." And she laughed and she said, "Yeah, no way, that he's not my type." And I said, "Okay," and I think it was like 2 years later they were married.
Wow.
And so things like that, and that wouldn't, that didn't come, I don't feel that didn't come from a spirit. I found out later that I was connected to this man from a past life.
Mhm.
And so that could be why that connection was so strong that I knew he was going to play a part in her life. And I'm getting the chills. And when I get the chills,
Yeah.
that's my truth what do you call it? Barometer.
Yeah, your barometer. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. As soon
So
as I feel chills, I know it's the truth that's coming out of my mouth or
yeah,
what I'm getting from the spirit world or myself.
nice. What misconceptions about this work and about your work do you wish people would just let go of?
Well, when I hear people say, "Well, what are you worried about? Why do you care about your past lives? Let's worry about this life." And I find people that are very one-dimensional say things like that, or really they're scared. That's what I take that like fear. And there are a lot of things we can learn from our past lives. Um, Particularly if you struggle with certain things, there's patterns. We could come back and be an addict for years and years, lives and lives, and that's a hard cycle to break. So when you have the more information you have about anything, the better choices you make, right? So I look at past lives like that, and it also helps me with connections to people. Sometimes you meet someone and you can't explain it, but you feel like, wow, like this person knows me already. And then there's people like in your family that you should be able to say anything to, and it's more guarded and it's not as free flowing. To me, that's past life stuff where, we come in with these contracts and, we have to figure out what our lessons are with certain people. They're our teachers, we're their teachers. You know that in a family.
Yeah.
You could be the pattern breaker in your family, which I
Yeah.
think you are.
Yeah.
So,
And
did I answer your question?
what about the misconceptions, or what mixed misconceptions about sort of mediumship and psychic work? Like, I get the past life thing, that's a huge stretch for a lot of people. But for things like psychic work and mediumship, which can be, I think, a little less of a stretch, maybe not, depends on the person. But what about that work? Is there anything you wish just people would like just let it go already?
Well,
Like for example, people that say that's all bullshit or it's all
yeah.
parlor tricks or, you know,
I come into everything. I mean, you say it's for entertainment purposes because you have to say that because sometimes you can have proof though. And that's what I'm talking about past life. There's documented cases
oh,
of
sure,
children and people knowing their names and where they lived and all of it. It's
sure.
documented. But in the psychic realm, it's a little bit harder to prove unless the person comes back to you and says, or calls you and says, hey, you were right about that,
Mhm.
or I did meet so and so, or I did, I
I
wish
did marry
people,
Tom. Yeah.
right.
Right.
I wish people were just more open because it could only help.
Yeah.
It's like a belief in a higher power.
Mhm.
I'm not here to convince anybody. I know that my life is better because I have a belief in a higher power. That's what works for me. It's like, why wouldn't you want more help? It's
Yeah.
not easy being in the body.
Yeah, for sure.
Life is not an easy road, right? A lot of times.
For sure. For sure.
And
And how
skeptics are my favorite.
that was my next question. I was like, how do
But
you
I just read your mind.
yeah, so go ahead. So how do you handle skeptics? What's your
Okay. Well, one of the first tarot card parties that I did, this I remember going there with my recorder. That's how long ago it was. And I think I was reading like six girls at this house. So I walk in and I'm nervous as hell, and I still get very nervous every time. Because I take this seriously, and and there's a lot of integrity in this for me.
Yep,
There's certain things you don't mess with. This is one of them.
yep,
Other people's emotions and this kind of work. Um, so the girl that I think was at the one of the girls, she didn't give the party, but she was at the party and she was very skeptical. And she said, "Today's my father's 10-year death anniversary." She just blurted that out. And she said, "And if you can't tell me what his nickname for me was, then I don't care what else you have to say." And I was like, "Whoa," you know. So I sat because there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that you're going to get the person they want. That doesn't always happen. You might get an uncle instead of a father. You might get a brother instead of a friend. That's just the way it goes. But who comes in but her father? And the father whispers in my ear again, and I'm getting the chills. And he said, "My little peanut." He goes, "Say that." So I said, "Your father's here, and he's saying he called you his little peanut." I still get choked up because she melted. She
oh,
cried, and that was the end of her skeptical mind. There was no more of it for her. She believed. That was what she needed to hear so that she could be present for the rest of it. And that's the thing with this kind of work. I mean, there's so much that can help us here because when people pass, there's always a lot of times unresolved issues. A- We have to forgive them. They have to forgive us. That we didn't say this. I wasn't with you when you passed. I feel so guilty. And none of this really matters to the spirits, but they know it matters to you, and you're still here, and they love you still. They'll always love you. So they want to help you, right?
yeah, yeah. Wow. How do you go about protecting like your own emotional and energetic boundaries when you work with clients? Because we often know folks that sometimes come for readings, whether they be psychic readings or medium readings or a hybrid of both, are often walking wounded people. At times can come from all walks of life. So how do you protect your own sort of energetic boundaries and emotional well-being when you do your work?
I think because I've been doing it for a long time, I've gotten better at that. In the beginning, it was harder to have boundaries. I didn't have any. But I pretty much like I say a prayer and I put protective light around me. I talk to my spirit guides, and I know that God is the ultimate force and that I'll always be taken care of. And I believe that, so I know it will happen. But sometimes before a reading comes into comes the time, I start getting information about the person.
Yeah.
And that's happened to me while my thing is always before I fall asleep. I see faces, I hear things,
Mhm.
and spirits try to come in at that time and I let them because I'm relaxed and so if it's an emotional thing, sometimes it's hard to shake it like afterwards, like with certain deaths. I have to say they've affected me
Mhm.
because they've affected the person that comes to me. So, certain things are harder to deal with, like, sudden deaths, murders, suicides, um, children.
Yeah.
Okay, so these deaths, and I got to tell you, for me, I have from the other side, I have gotten a lot of information, and they're all the same. Okay, which I love. Meaning, for me, this is my belief. No one, I don't have to convince anyone else, but suicide's no different. Murder's no different. And this, I know this is a lot to throw at you, but when you step back, we're all from the same source. And hurt people. Okay. So, that like I said, if I'm doing a reading and it's like a that kind of energy, yeah, it takes me a while to shake it, but I do. And you go on just like the person.
Wow. Um, Do you have any advice for any listeners who may want to know how they can strengthen their own intuition or recognize psychic powers or explore sort of mediumship? What would be your advice? Is there any particular practices that help to foster that you,
Yeah, I did it like a game. I used to use a deck of cards and just try to do black and red, and just do what I saw, felt, or, I feel like meditating was the way in for me.
Mm,
And if you're serious about this, because all of us can do this, I do believe that people have certain levels of talent, just like a guitar player. Somebody could pick up a guitar and just play. Somebody needs lessons. And some people, no matter how much they play, they're not going to be great, or just not their thing. I feel like it's the same thing. I feel like all of us can do this because we all have the same. And now, in this time in the world, with everything happening, it's even easier because the energy is quickened. And so, my advice is to trust yourself. That's the biggest thing. When you journal, write down stuff, especially with dreams. Or if you get a feeling about a person that something's going to happen to them, good and bad, just write it down so that you can go back and check your work. That's what I call it. And if you're drawn to a book, read it. If you're drawn to certain tools, then use them. Tarot cards is one, crystals, pendulums, oracles. There's all kinds of tools. But whatever your intuition is trying to tell you, that's the thing. We don't listen sometimes. We just be more open and patient because it takes time. It takes a lifetime sometimes.
Awesome. And so, I wanted to shift gears a little bit to, I often refer to you as a soul walker. You're one of, v- probably the one of very few that I know of, personally know of, who have been present, whether, accidentally, incidentally, purposefully, during the passing of a few souls. And, and you've also had the experience where souls who have just passed have come and visited you. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you define like that role for yourself? How do you like embrace that? How do you view it? During like what in your experience is the most important thing during, say, the final stay with someone who is preparing to leave?
I feel that I'm there to help that soul in whatever way that takes form. If it's to have, if I'm lucky enough that they're conscious and we can talk and they're fearful because everything comes up at the end, let's face it. And if it's to just let them know that there are things that I've experienced in my life that will help them to not be afraid. Okay. I heard the perfect thing. Death is 100% safe. And I love that. I always felt like it was like falling asleep on the couch and then you wake up, you don't remember getting up because you're tired and you wake up in your bed. It's like you just go to another room. That's how I explain death. Because we don't die. Our consciousness lives on. The body dies, but our consciousness, our personality live on. So I've had the experience of people in my family. I've lost a lot of people. That's just been my road this life. It's been a hard one because of that too, by the way.
Hmm.
But so beautiful. And my first experience with seeing a spirit was my aunt that was killed in a car accident. She was 39 years old, and it happened on a Sunday, and I'll never forget this day as long as I live. It was 1984. It was a long time ago. And I remember, by the way, I think it was 84. I'm bad with years. I remember, the car accident happened in the afternoon on Sunday, and we got the phone call, and she lived in the Bronx. She was actually coming to Long Island to visit my family. And I remember driving in the back. Yeah, I was sitting in the back seat. My brother and my sister-in-law were in the front seat driving to the Bronx. And I remember seeing her in a coffin. Now, they had told my father on the phone that it was my uncle who took the worst of it. He was driving. It was my uncle, my aunt, my cousin, my 16-year-old cousin in the back seat, and her boyfriend. And they said that most of the worst one was my uncle. But I kept seeing my aunt while we were riding in the car in a coffin. And I couldn't shake it and I couldn't shake it. And I just thought it was my fear. I was just so scared because she was like my godmother and like my closest aunt at the time. So we get to the hospital and I find out that she's in really bad shape. She's on life support. And, my uncle was conscious. My cousin didn't have a scratch on her, and her boyfriend broke his arm. So my aunt had taken the brunt of the whole accident. And when I saw her, she was already gone. She was already out of her body. And she was on a ventilator. And they were just keeping her alive so that we could say goodbye. And this was very traumatic for me and my family because before that, that was it was like before her death and then after her death that changed everything.
How old were you?
I was 22 and newly sober, and I was a year sober in AA, by the
Right.
way. So it was a challenging time for many reasons. But the part I want to get to is that night, my cousin, we took her home with us. She was laying sleeping on the floor next to me, my bed in a sleeping bag, and I was in the bed. And I woke up suddenly and I was sitting up. And I remember my aunt was at the foot of my bed and she was full form and she had like a yellow, golden, white light around her and she looked beautiful. And I was just staring because I had never experienced this. And she hugged me and she said, "I love you, but I have to go." And she was gone instantly. It was like gone. So I remember just sitting there and now I was just waiting. I was waiting because I knew the phone was going to ring and they were going to, my mother was going to get the call that she passed because I knew she came to say goodbye to me. Sure enough, the phone rang and I sat up. I was still sitting up. My mother walked in my room and she said, why are you awake?" And I said, "Aunt Joanne is gone, right?" And she said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So we didn't talk anymore that day, but then I told her what happened. And in fact, she appeared to my cousin and to two cousins, her daughter and my in dreams though. She came to them in dreams. But I was awake. So that was my experience of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
But I
you,
think I think soul walking, I've also been present for other people in my family passing.
yeah,
I think because I'm comfortable with the subject of death more than most people, I guess, at least in my family.
yeah,
And I know now that not everyone lives to be old. Not everyone's supposed to. And I also know the difference between having quality of life and just being alive. And that's from just getting older and more, growing and knowing the difference. And I would never keep someone here because even though I know I won't see them again here physically, I know that's not love. to
right,
hold- to hold someone's soul back is
right.
in my eyes, that's not really loving the person. You have to let them go. And yes, grief takes a long time and depend this was a sudden thing. It took me a year to even be able to function. Seriously.
Yeah, yeah,
But there's all different types of grieving and all different types of death, to deal with. But did I answer the question?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
No, that was yeah. I don't even know if there was a question in there other than we were talking about soul walking and as I said, I know I'm very aware of many people passing around you, next to you, with you in the room. Um, did you want to mention anything about? I know you had a recent experience where you soul walked someone home. I don't know how I don't remember how many years ago it was, but it was the most recent one I'm aware of.
It's a few years. I think it might be three now
Okay.
or coming
Did you
up.
want to share anything about that? Because I know you mentioned it earlier that you were like, oh, I got to bring up.
Well, the interesting thing about this was that my cousin had called me. She lives in Florida and had called, she was going to Italy with the whole family and they were all, going away. And my uncle he was in hospice, but he wasn't, he was, if you looked at him, you didn't even know the guy was sick.
Right,
He was close to 90. He had just celebrated a birthday. I mean, but still, when I, anyway, getting back to the beginning of the story, she asked me if I could watch her dogs while they went away
right,
and check in on her father, who I always had a great relationship with this uncle. Him and I used to laugh a lot together. So I said, sure. And as soon as that call was over, I said it to you or someone I know. I said, my uncle's going to die when I'm there. I just knew it.
Mhm.
And I knew that was the real reason I was going to Florida, not to really watch the dogs or anything else. That was the reason.
Yep.
So when I got there and saw him, he was so happy to see me because I hadn't seen him in a while, like 8, 10 years maybe. And I was so happy to spend time with him. And I have to say, his death was because I wasn't so close emotionally to him. It was an enjoyable situation that actually taught me a lot. So we had conversations. I spent hours with him,
Yep.
days, few days, and we talked about death and we joked about it. And after we went through a lot of the Catholic stuff and got rid of all that baloney, because that's a lot of baloney. We got to the real heart of matters, and I said to him, it's really up to you. You can will yourself to go if you feel you're ready. I believe that. I'm not saying that's a fact, but I believe that. So he would joke around with me, and when I would leave him, and he would say, "You think tonight's the night?" And I said, I remember saying to him, "It is if you want it to be," you know. And we had such a great couple of days, like 3 days together, and then, sure enough. And when he did pass, I remember walking in the room, and I was the only one there, of course. And I kissed him goodbye, kissed his forehead, and I said, Uncle Al, you always had great hair. And you know, and then I just smiled and I left. And I remember just thinking, I was so grateful that I could be there for him because I felt like he needed someone there. I feel like a lot of people do. You know, it's sometimes it's the social workers, it's the nurses.
Mhm.
It's they're there. They're the only people there, and but, I really know now, like, even if you don't make it there to see your loved one off, that the people that have passed away are usually right around them, that with their hands extended and ready to help them cross over. You're never alone.
Right. And do you have a take on or experience with, lots of times folks sit with loved ones in a hospice or a hospital, round the clock and, days without, going home and getting a good meal, and they'll leave for a half hour to go home, have a shower, let the dog out, and the person passes. Do you have
A
any
theory?
advice if that happens, or advice for people who feel horrible about that?
And you are absolutely right. And sometimes that's exactly what that soul wants, is to not have their loved ones there. And I believe that's what that soul wants to do. And that
Right.
soul should be allowed to do that. What we do to ourselves with that is we go back to that, I should have been there. Why wasn't I there? And it really doesn't matter because, like I said, the other people have stepped forward, or their family members or their spirit guides. And sometimes it's too painful for that soul to look in the eyes of their loved ones and let go and take their last breath. I was there when my mother took her last breath, and I was grateful because I felt like, well, my mother was there when I took my first breath. So now I can be there when she takes her last breath. I felt honored. I was lucky. She waited. She hung on.
Mhm.
They can't always do that either. We don't know everything here.
Mhm.
There are mysteries that are supposed to be in place.
Yeah, so nothing to beat yourself up about if that does
Yeah.
happen. And similarly,
Yeah.
on the flip side, there's I know you've had the experience. You mentioned your mom, and I know of other experiences where that soul will wait till certain people arrive. And they may not go right that moment, but they wait till everyone's together. And then, for whatever reason, their contract is to go at that time. So every soul's different, I would imagine. And the contract that they make when they come into this, um, Earth school is unique and individual for each of us. So, wow. Okay. So, we're doing this with one-on-ones with really dynamic, fabulous, witchy people, witchy wise people. And so I want to ask you, we have a cosmic conversation challenge where we ask three intense questions. And I want to know, Rena, are you up for it?
Sure.
All
It's
right.
the more intense, the better.
Okay. So the first one is, Rena, what brings you joy?
Oh, that's a good question. What brings me joy? Well, the first thing that brings me that I could think of right this second is my niece's two children that are 3 and 1, and I just love being with these kids. I love playing with them, talking to them, watching them see things, witnessing them see things for the first time. It makes my heart just full. That brings me joy. It's, family, friends, sitting around talking, that brings me joy. Traveling brings me joy. I've learned so many things in my life through traveling. A lot with you, by the way. Beautiful scenes, just being in a place that is just mind, blows your mind. A sunset, um, dolphins swimming in the ocean, just God's beautiful world. There is no way that you can look at this universe and think that, man created that. There's no way. Doesn't register for me. So that's what brings me joy. And also, I feel joyful when I feel like I'm helping someone with grief in a way that they've been carrying something for years, and you know we have a reading sometimes and it gets right to the bottom of it, and they could let go a little, and because we're all like little kids just running around scared. I mean, I really see that we are, we're lost little kids running around, and when it gets close to the end, we're more scared than normally because we don't know the unknown. So anything that we can find to hang on to, but really is what it is you're letting it go. That's the secret. So that brings me joy. And even, New York pizza brings me joy too, by the way.
I'm right there with you. Okay.
Okay.
That's a great answer. The second cosmic conversation challenge question, what is God?
Wow, you're asking the big questions, huh?
They wouldn't be cosmic, conversation challenges if they weren't a challenge, Rena.
Okay. You got that right, Sue. Well, I think my concept and my definition of God has changed from a little child who went to Catholic school
Oof.
and was taught a fearful God, was
Mm.
introduced to a fearful God, um, that I never really bought into, by the way. I was fearful of the nuns, and they were trying to make me fearful of God. But for some reason, it never added up. Like it just, even as a young child, I knew it didn't make sense. Well, why would there be this force or this person at that time? Because God is not a person. But what I felt was just fear and unloved. So why would that be God? That wasn't my God. When I arrived into AA at the age of 19, I was introduced to a different type of God, which was a higher power, which is what I'm comfortable with, or source. I like higher power. It's just somebody, something else running the show, not me and not people. Okay. But we are all from this source. We all have a piece of this in us. That's who we are. We are God. So God's not up there, you know.
Or
My
Santa
nephew,
Claus God.
my nephew was like 3 or 4, and he said, I'll never forget. He said, Aunt Rita, where's God? And I remember pointing to my heart, and I'll move up. And I just put my hand on my heart and I did it to him. And I said, that's where God is inside you. And and that and the children have the best questions, don't they? It's simple, it's true. There's none of this nonsense, or fear-based. It's just very pure. So if you want to know how you're doing, hang out with a kid, and that's how you know it, how you doing, really. Um, but
Okay.
now I feel like it's a consciousness. It's a place that I try to stay or go to on a daily basis now. Because as you get older, whenever I get scared in the middle of the night, and I still do, and the first thing I say is, where is God? Like, where is that place that I go? Because it's like a place for me. It's consciousness. All of us are connected. We're all connected, every person through this. So my I guess my definition of God has changed. And I again, I think there's things we don't know here, for sure. No one could say for sure, but
Well, I'm going to say for sure. So we have question number 3. Rena, finish this sentence.
okay.
My purpose in this life is.
My purpose in this life is to love unconditionally and love big. I know that. To make people feel safe, to now my mission I know is to stay awake and stay conscious and to help others light the way to love again. That's always the answer. Love is always the answer. And it's true now more than ever that we need this. And that's all our purpose is to wake up and to express it, to give it freely and not say what's in it for me. Get rid of that. We once we get rid of that, then we are doing God's work. And I just want to be of service now. That's it. I'm not looking for, the things that I used to look for and used to drive me. I'm looking for to be of service and to just be peaceful.
Awesome. Rena, thank you. And so if anybody's interested in connecting with you for a reading, whether it be a psychic reading or a mediumship situation reading, how do they find you? Is it email best or
Yeah, just you
okay,
can
so
you put it
I'll
up
put
there.
yeah, I'll put Rena's email in the link in the channel link there and she comes highly recommended. So, really want to thank you today for your time on Cosmic Conversations. It's been an absolute insightful, intense conversation, and lots of love and blessings to you.
Can I just say that once again, I'm in awe of you.
Aw,
You took this, you started this, you are always the rock for me. And I think we can do great things. I know we can. So
of
thank
course.
you for creating this, and I will help and be with you always.
Well, awesome. Well, here we go. Hang
Thank
on for
you.
the ride. Well, thank you again. And until next time, folks, thanks for tuning in if you have, and we'll see you again soon.